Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to be a great leader? Well, we've got a great show for you. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls. If you want to know everything that we're up to, all the things, you can go to giantsandsmalls.com. If you want to know when we go live, go to YouTube, subscribe, hit the alert button so you know when we go live every single dang time. Join us on Facebook at Tribe of Giants. There's a great group of people there that are there to support, love, and encourage you as you're going through your Giants journey. We've got our SG groups. We've got SG6 that just wrapped up, SG7 that's running, and the Infinity group, SG8, that is happening. What date, Nick? November
No,
9th?
November 9th, 7:30 p.m. Mountain.
Wouldn't that have been awesome if it was November 8th or something like that?
That
The Infinity group?
I should have done that. Yeah,
We
yeah.
start the day after.
Because there's hope after infinity, right? There's something
Yes,
beyond.
just beyond infinity,
Yeah,
as Buzz Lightyear would say. Hey, well, we have a great guest. I am so excited for this show. Nick, will you introduce our guest today?
I'd love to. Yeah, we have
Hey.
Meredith Bell. She's the co-founder and president of Grow Strong Leaders. Her company publishes software tools and books that help people build strong relationships at work and at home. So Meredith is an expert in leader and team communications. She's the author of 3 books and the host of the Grow Strong Leaders podcast, which I'd highly recommend you dive into. She co-authored her latest books, Connect with Your Team, Mastering the Top 10 Communication Skills and Peer Coaching Made Simple, with her business partner, Dr. Dennis Coates. In them, Meredith and Denny provide how-to guides for improving communication skills and serving as a peer coach to someone else. You can get details in the link that will show right there at the bottom of the screen. Meredith, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be with both of you, Nick and Ryan.
Yeah, we're going to dive into your journey and your expertise. So we're glad to have you. We usually go back in time a little bit to when you had an awakening moment to, I was living life a certain way. I thought that was me. And then I had this realization that that's not me anymore. And then there's a creation of the you that we see today. Can you talk about that?
I'll go back to when I left the field of education, because growing up, I always wanted to be a teacher. I played school, where I was the teacher and I recruited
Yeah.
other kids to be in my class. So I always saw myself in that role. And yet, when I got into teaching, I realized after a few years, I was kind of bored by the repetitive lesson plans. And so I got my master's and moved into school board office positions where I could have greater influence over larger numbers of teachers. And I still did some training. So I was doing some teaching, but I realized, after a couple of different school systems where I wasn't very effective in playing politics or dealing with bureaucracy, that maybe this wasn't for me after all. And so I jumped and made a leap that was truly on faith, because I had no business background. I had never taken a sales or marketing course in college. I was all about education. I decided to start my own solo practice, doing training programs for companies in this whole area of communication skills, because I knew that was sort of the glue that holds things together and allows people to really perform well. So that was a true major moment in my life, to change careers and do something totally different with no background. And what I had going for me, I think, was just this confidence that I could figure it out. This was way before the internet or anything like
Yeah.
that. It was books and audio tapes and those kinds of things that I just had to consume, absorb, and apply. And so that's what I ended up doing.
I picture this big, like giant leap, like, and then you just knew how to do it like that, right? You were skilled instantly and just walk on and everybody.
Oh no,
Yeah.
no, it was a lot of falling down and, scraping
Mm.
my knees or breaking a leg.
Yeah.
There were a lot of mistakes along the way. But it was just one of these things where I just had this clear picture of what I wanted to do. And I
Mm.
knew I could just figure it out. And so I looked at ways I could use my existing strengths to market myself because I didn't know anything about marketing either. And so I started getting booked on speaking to these local groups. And from there, people in the audience would say, hey, maybe you could help us with this. And it grew. So I learned quickly how to identify what can I do to reach the people I want to reach. And
Yeah.
that's just been my journey. Also, I think one of the other things I had going for me is I've always been an avid learner. It was like, I know there's more I can grow, expand,
Yeah.
and learn from to get better at whatever it is that I'm trying to do. Another major leap was joining up with another solo consultant, Denny Coates. You mentioned him. He and I met in 1990, started collaborating, and decided, you know what, we're compatible enough. We can put our two businesses together. And at the same time, we brought in a third partner to run the business. And the three of us have now worked together for over 30 years.
Wow. Wow.
But that was also a big leap because we didn't have any guarantee, but I could sense our values, those core elements that really matter when you're looking at a potential business partner. Sometimes in business, we can get so excited about the idea and we have this instant click with somebody. We think, well, everything else will, any issues will fade away, or we refuse to even look at them. But in our case, the three of us have this deep love and respect for each other that we've acquired over time. And because of that, just like in a good marriage, we committed to work through whatever differences we had, whatever challenges.
Yeah.
We have a very collaborative working relationship with a deep respect for each other's opinions. And I think that has served us well over all these years.
Let's dive into mindset a little bit because it could be easy to just highlight the steps that got you to where you are. But there was also a development of who you are before you did any of the doing. And so going back a little bit, when you made that leap, you had a mindset of, I can learn it. I might not know how to do it. I can take my current skills and use those and add to those. But can you go into the mindset that you developed a bit? Does that make sense as a question?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I think a key thing is having that deep belief I can do this.
Mm.
I've done other things. So instead of talking myself out of it, and saying, oh, well, there's this reason I shouldn't do it or that reason.
Yeah.
But another big motivator was to get away from that pain of
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
was. I had this belief that over here has to be better than where I am right now. And so I
I
could,
can relate right now to this because I just made the
yes,
leap
I
from a
know.
career. Yeah.
Mhm,
Yep. The pain
exactly.
was too much. It's like, I don't want to stay in the fire anymore. This hurts. Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and the thing is, I didn't know back then to use the word create, like
Uh,
we've learned so much from, the ultimate coach and all the related conversations.
yeah.
I just knew that I could make it work,
Mm.
that I could, and I didn't use these words in my own mindset of I can be who I need to be, but that's really what I was coming from, is I can adapt. I can learn what I need
Right.
to learn. So it's that open mindedness when you talk about a mindset, being open to meeting people that can help me learn faster, and open to growth, and reading the books, listening to the tapes, being open to hearing something that could really make a difference for me. So I think that's the key, really a key to making that kind of change that we want to make, is trust that, and faith that where I'm going, even though I can't see it right now, what is that going to look like and how is it all going to work? That was hard for me because I'm one of these planners. I like step one,
Yeah.
two, three.
Yeah.
And so when I don't have that, it can feel a little anxious at first, but I've learned to really eliminate the time between feeling that anxiety and getting past it and
I
getting
love
into
that
being where I need to be.
yeah, you just said anxious, which means that Meredith Bell, she feels anxiety. So going
It's
into
okay.
that, the idea that you may have had moments where there was anxiety, moments where there might have been some depression, some sadness, some loss, some disappointments. Did you have those? When you had them, what was your process of moving beyond those or working with them?
Yeah. A key, yes, I've experienced all of those in my life. I have to say I haven't dealt with depression in the way that many people have. I've had more situational depression over
Yeah.
something that's occurred, but not general depression. But the anxiety, yeah. And one of the big things that I have learned to do is letting go of the past and realizing I can't change that.
Mm.
I can learn from it. And so, what are the lessons to extract so I don't keep carrying the weight of that experience with me and so I can move forward into this new adventure that's facing me and I can embrace it with enthusiasm and excitement. And I think that's really been a key step for me and also the approach of how is this working for me? This whole thing of gratitude, everything is evolving for me if I choose to see it that way and choose to look at it from through that lens, because
Yeah.
that makes a huge difference in how I respond to the opportunity and how quickly I can let go of any negative feelings that I had associated with something I did or didn't do.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I got well, I got tagged in a Facebook post by Matt Smith. Matt Smith is an amazing coach over in the UK, and he's done stuff with Steve Hardison. In fact, he was responsible for the Ultimate Experience in London, and he talked about he talked in his post about the tow truck driver distinction that Steve Hardison
Hmm.
talks about is and that's
Yes.
it's just speaking out that it's going to be this way and then approaching it and going into the situation believing it's going to be just fine,
Yeah.
it's going to be great. He's projecting what his experience is going to be before it even happens.
Hmm.
And as you
Hmm.
do that, and guess what, before this show you forwarded Nick like a 6 page, like talking about your story and some of the things that you've done. And what it did for me too is I looked at it and I read through it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a fantastic interview. And look, it's amazing already. It's the perspective. It's how you choose to view things, because it's very easy to get stuck down into the feelings of anxiety, and
Yes.
your
And
past has that weight, that gravity that's pulling against you. It's very
mhm.
easy to get stuck in that.
Oh, you just mentioned the word weight. This is one of the other key aspects of my own development that I've learned because I tend to be more serious. I take things seriously. I take myself too seriously at times. And I had this wonderful coaching session with Jason Goldberg a number of years ago. And he was listening to me describe things, and I was expecting him to come out with some really big insight that would be helpful to me. And he said, Meredith, what I'm hearing is the thread through all this is you need to lighten up. He said, there's this serious, you need to be, you feel like you need to play bigger. So that's a theme that ties in beautifully with the Giants, right? Is thinking about playing small. And he said, what if you really were playful in how you see all of this?
Mm.
And that has made such a huge difference. In fact, recently, Paula, my other business partner, and I we're having this discussion about task list, right? What are our to-dos? What are our priorities? And she was talking about being more playful. And we decided to rename it, what's our playlist for the day?
I like
Think
that.
about how that feels. Isn't that
Yeah.
wonderful?
Yeah.
So now we have our playlist that we describe to each other. And that just feels so much lighter and fun and enjoyable. I never thought of my task list as heavy, but it sure does have a different sense to it.
Yeah,
to call
Ryan.
it our playlist.
Ryan adds the lightness to it for sure. I take things so seriously. It's like task list, task list, task list. We get a lot done, but man, that lightness is so needed. Because we'll banter offline. People don't know about this. If they saw it, they would probably shut us down. But we have fun with it, and that's what makes it work so well. I
Well, and
like
it makes everything so much more enjoyable when you see it as, and Chris Doris loves to say this, I get to do this instead
yeah,
of I have to do, I get to do this. And so it just feels different. It feels like I'm making this choice.
yeah,
It's an opportunity, not an obligation. And
yeah.
that just,
Beautiful.
it's just, it goes back to your question about mindset. It's all of looking at how can I approach this so I am my best and highest self as I'm doing it. And no matter what the result is, it's all good because I can
Mm,
learn from it.
We have this lens that we look through called the 12 journeys. And so everything you say, I keep anchoring it in, but that's my way of viewing it, right? Is you had this person that you were in a previous life. Let's say you had a past life, we'll call it this, in this life, right? You lived a certain way. And then you had a discovery, an awakening of that's not going to work with me. So I'm going to try something else, and you made this leap into another area. And so you had this anxiety that was present. And then you moved to an acceptance of this is where I'm at. This is who I am within that. You started to see gratitude because of that acceptance. Acceptance is powerful if we can speak about that for a minute. And tell me if I'm wrong. I might be putting words in your mouth here, but we see the journeys as going through that of recognizing who you've been, awakening to that, maybe feeling some sadness and loss over not being where you thought you would be, and then moving toward acceptance, which gives you that peace that you need to start noticing gratitude and abundance and possibility. Can you talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit?
Sure. There are some powerful questions that I have run through my mind very often, especially if I get in a place where I'm having the thought, this isn't what I want, or, you know, um, is this the best thing for me to be doing now? As business owners, there's all these questions that come up in terms of our day to day activities. One of the things that I have learned to ask, and I integrate from so many people, is how is this thought serving me? Or is this thought serving me? Because if it isn't, I don't want to entertain it. I don't want to give it
Yeah.
the space that it needs to grow and create anxiety. Because I have been there, especially at night. And I'm sure many of you have had this experience of waking up at night, not being able to go back to sleep because you're starting to play all these negative movies, either from the past or imagining in the future. And I just remind myself, worry is misuse of the imagination. And so, how can I create a movie that excites me, that makes me feel good? So, how can I
Mm.
replace these worrisome or anxious thoughts with some that are going to create the outcome I really want? Because then I will be able to, first of all, get back to sleep, but also the next day come to my day with greater energy, enthusiasm, and confidence in what I can do. If I have allowed myself to just, fret, then that doesn't serve me. I can start going down the road of, thinking of what could go wrong, and just visiting history and reminding myself of the older way of being that never served me well. The other question I love is, given this situation, whatever it is, what would I like to create?
Mm.
mm,
Because that again gets me in that mindset of gratitude. This can work for me. What do I have to bring here? Who can help me, or who do I want to be in my approach to this? And I avoid the word need. I know that who do I need to be, but sometimes that feels heavy. And so, like, oh, there's a gap between,
Like
who
a
I
shame a
am.
little bit, like a guilt.
It could be,
Yeah.
just that need. So who would I like
lack.
to be? Who would I choose to be right now, given what I want to accomplish? what's required. And so that kind of thinking to me is very helpful in looking at the place I want to come from in approaching whatever it is I'm going to be doing.
I like that. You know, I like the visual of a door, that the door is acceptance, and that's you being okay with who you are right now. And then the behind the door is everything that ever happened, and you can go back and look at it, but you don't have to carry it forward. It's not like it needs to come through the door, and a lot of times it won't fit. I picture the Grinch when he's stealing Christmas, just trying to get the bag up the chimney, just shoving it in there. That's what we do with our past, is we just try and shove it through the door and bring it forward, and then create our future from there. And so the door is kind of that giving, or given where I am, what would I like to create? That opens up the possibility to everything in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to carry the past with you. That's the beauty of that question, is given what is, what would I like to create, or who would I like to be? That's powerful, because that gives you a chance to just release it, let it
Yep.
go.
You don't have to fret anymore. I'm going to make fret or fretting like a popular term now again. I haven't heard fret for a couple years, so I'm excited about.
Isn't that on a guitar, a fret?
I think that's a little different, but if you
Is
if you
it?
need
Well,
to look at
maybe
your
I'm off.
guitar, yeah, it is a fret.
Well, you know, thinking about this whole thing of acceptance, accepting, you know, who I am, what I've done. I can't change the reality of what has happened in the past. I can change how I view myself. And I think one of the other aspects is becoming more loving and gentle with myself in this journey of growth, to not have these expectations of me. I can have standards of excellence that I aspire to, but I don't criticize myself internally
Yeah.
for whether I should have, or, you know, using those kinds of words, being kind to myself and saying, you know what, you did the best you could. No, you didn't get the result you wanted. That's
Yeah.
okay. But if we really examine our self-talk, and how often are we being unkind to ourselves when we're the person we need to be the most kind to first, in
Yeah.
order to be able to be kind to others.
This is kind of the practice, right?
Mhm.
We express from here. So what comes out of us is an expression of what's going on within, right? So if we're fretting, I'm going to use your word, Ryan. If we're fretting in here, often we'll
It's
express.
Meredith. I copied it. I'm stealing it and running with it.
Yeah. But it really is a practice here first, because if you can be kind to yourself, you can be kind to others. If you can love this, you can love that. And so that's a great practice right there. We're going to tie this into what you're doing currently, because you take all of this, who you are, and you do that with your business partners. You do that with your clients. And it's an expression of who you are in here. And when you started, let me move forward from that, because I see like this pathway that's created here. Is maybe you didn't know how you were going to do that with your current clients. And in reading your document that you shared, that was a development. It came about through practice. I mean, you were out there doing it, and then it evolved. A lot of people don't want to step into the unknown because they can't see the path. How do you embrace uncertainty and not being able to see clearly? That's kind of a big wrap around, like,
You
let's
know,
get to this.
there's two aspects of it.
Okay.
I mentioned Chris Doris earlier. You know, I'm such a fan of his. He has this concept of all in, which is making the decision and not looking back and saying, I'm going to do it. And that's part of what is in play for me with this facing and going into the unknown. One of our goals, for example, is to sell more than 1 million copies of our books. And that's not from an ego or financial perspective. That is because we know those books have the power to help people have better relationships in the workplace. You know, we're still exploring how we're going to do that. We don't
Yeah.
have all the answers, but we thought, let's set an audacious goal. And actually, it's millions, not just 1 million, because we feel this responsibility. And I think that's a key part. What's driving us? And what's driving us is knowing we've got these capabilities, we've got these skills, we've got this information that other people need to know about. And if we play small, they're never going to learn about it. So what can we do to play big, to play as giants,
Yeah.
to really have impact? And so it might be useful to use my podcast as an example of
Yeah,
how I
please
have
do.
done that, because I think that, first of all, starting my podcast was another one of those unknowns, right? Because I'd never had a podcast. I'd had some conversations that I recorded with other people. So I thought, I've got the skills to do this. So let's just set it up and do it. And I was lucky to have Paula as my business person who could produce it. But the idea was, how can I get some of our message out and bring in people that can share this important message of personal development and growth with other people? So I initially invited people that were in my world and asked them about being guests. And I had a number of wonderful people on. And then I got to thinking about my focus, and I wanted it to be exclusively on this idea of personal development and leadership development. And that's why our brand, Grow Strong Leaders, my podcast is Grow Strong Leaders. I want to talk to people who are focused on developing themselves and also developing the people on their team or in their whole organization. So I was playing small in a way in some of the people that I had invited to be guests. They were a lot of them were speakers, authors, consultants. Some were business owners. I wasn't striving's the
Mhm.
wrong word. I wasn't aiming for some of these higher level companies.
Stretching, right? Like
Huh?
intention, you weren't stretching.
No,
Yeah,
I was not allowing myself to think bigger.
yeah,
Okay, so I was the small inside the house.
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
so And so as I started expanding that, man, I outgrew that house really fast.
yeah,
And now I've interviewed people from Merck, from FedEx, from Moderna, they're at UC Berkeley, some of these decision makers in
yeah,
these areas. And the beauty of that was coming up with an approach where I could be of service to them first.
yeah.
And
Okay,
so
that's huge.
that's
Yeah,
really the key, is thinking about how can I serve this person before I ask something of them.
I want to hang here. Rich Habits talks about this in his program too. Ivan Meisner talks about giver's gain. And
Mhm.
it's not, your intention is to truly serve, not to get something from them.
Yeah.
And so when you come with the question, how can I serve the person I'm with? It doesn't matter who they are. You're looking at what they're trying to reach as a goal and how can I be a part of that? And then if they ask you, well, what are you up to? Then you can share that. But the intention is, how can I serve the person in front of me? That's big.
Well, it's huge. And you referenced the chapter that I shared with you. Years ago, I was reading The Prosperous Coach, and I'm
Yeah,
not a professionally paid coach. We are a software company. We publish our own books.
yeah,
We use products to help improve other people's lives. But I'm always thinking of how can I improve as someone interacting with others. So there's a lot about coaching that really resonates with me. And in that book, in one of Rich Litvin's chapters, he asked this question that changed my whole perspective. And it reinforced this idea of service, but taking it to another level that I hadn't thought about before, which is before you have a conversation with someone, ask yourself, how can I serve this person so powerfully that they never forget our conversation for the rest of their life? And the reason that resonated with me is, and this is years ago, is because when I would get in a conversation with a new connection on LinkedIn, let's say, I was kind of waiting for an opportunity to be able to talk about our product,
yeah,
right?
yeah. To present,
Get
right?
in that sales conversation. And what I realized with that question was, if you just stop that and focus on what can I do as I'm listening to this person, learning about them, to discover a way that I could be of help to them, then it's going to open up automatically opportunities at the right time to talk about that. I didn't have to force it. And this all goes back to who am I being? Because if I am being a person that is approaching a conversation from a spirit of service, the other person feels it. Just like they can feel the subtle pressure if I'm coming to have a look, to look for an opportunity to talk about myself or talk about what, we could do for you. But if I'm coming from, let me learn about you, let me learn what's important to you. And in this case, talking to these people who are in roles like chief learning officer at one of these large companies and asking them in a pre-interview conversation, what are you most excited about? What are you most proud of in what you're doing? These folks light up
Yeah.
talking,
Yeah.
given the opportunity. And so it forms this wonderful connection so that during the interview, it just flows so beautifully because we've already got this relationship built on shared interests, and they sense my genuine caring about them and caring about, as I tell them, bringing out their unique brilliance.
I
That's
love
my.
it.
And so when they hear that and they feel it, it makes all the difference. And it has led to some just amazing opportunities for us to then be able to work with these companies to help them in their leadership development programs.
Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. We're going to take a quick break here and then be right back. We're going to play just a network video and then we're going to continue that conversation if that works for you. Are you tired of playing small? Stop wondering what it takes to live a giant life. Come stand on the shoulders of giants. From our mind-shifting interviews with the world's most powerful giants to our global community of people reaching their potential just like you, Wake Up with Giants TV offers hundreds of episodes to help you live a giant life. Listen now on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Spotify, and more. Wake Up with Giants TV.
Guy had a beautiful voice. It sounded a lot like
that.
yours.
What? Talking to myself over here. Meredith, before that break, you talked about the power of highlighting the creations and skills of others. We've had literally millions of dollars, I would say, of coaching just from this program that we've received by just letting people share their wisdom like you. I mean, I can only imagine if we were to sit in a conversation, a 1-hour conversation with you, what the fees would be and what we'd be paying for all this coaching. And what's amazing about programs like this and podcasts is that powerful people are willing to share their stories with you if you make it about them, right? And that's what we've learned through the Giants is that we want to highlight you and your journey because it serves our community. That's one thing. But we also learn. I mean, our 12 Journeys developed and was created as kind of an amalgamation of things we've been learning through this show.
Well, one of the things that I would love to share with you and your audience is one of the most powerful ways of enriching the lives of others. And that's with the power of appreciation. Because we all have this need to be appreciated, as human beings. We want to be recognized and acknowledged. I just love Steve Hardison's emphasis on this acknowledgement of others.
Yeah.
And so appreciation to me is sort of that internal element that we do first, and then we can express that to other people. And I'll share something I learned many years ago. I bet you it's at least 10 years ago. I heard this podcast episode with Joe Polish and Dan Sullivan. And Dan Sullivan is the CEO of Strategic Coach. And he is one who's fascinated with words.
Yep.
And this word appreciate, interesting timing of that. But this word
I like words.
has two different meanings. One, in the military sense, in a way, this idea of, they sent out a scout to appreciate what was going on with the quote enemy. Well, what that really is having an understanding, a strategic understanding of what is going on there. And so when we apply that to a person, it's taking the time to think about the significance of that person in our lives. We don't often take time to do that. The other aspect of
Can we hang on that real quick? Just
What were the other aspects?
Yeah. So appreciate, that word comes from to add value to something, right? Is to take what it is and increase the value of it.
Yes.
And that's something that humans do that, I don't know, maybe other creatures do it. We just don't speak to them. So maybe we'll find out one day.
Well, that's the other aspect of appreciate, besides having that strategic understanding. It is when you think of appreciate in terms of, say, stocks or real estate, it goes up in value, as you said. We don't always apply that to people. And this has two meanings that to me are just so powerful and profound. They're worth really pondering. I like that alliteration there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So this idea of, if I spend time thinking about what is it I value about that other person. Let's say I'm going to have a conversation with someone and I really want to have a better relationship with that person. Maybe it's someone important to me. It could be a spouse. It could be, someone I work with, but I want to increase the power of that relationship. So one of the things you can do is to make a physical list, write out 6 or 8 things about that person that you really value. And what that does, that brief exercise, is it helps you in your own mind increase their value, because now you're more consciously aware of all the ways they contribute to your life. The other thing that happens then when you have that conversation with that person and you bring that mindset, you don't have to say the words, here are all the ways I appreciate you. You don't have to say that. What you do is you're bringing that attitude, that sense of caring and appreciation to them, and they feel it.
They do, right?
Feel that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the second benefit of doing this is that they increase their sense of appreciation of their own value in their own mind. And think about this: when you have been with someone, maybe it was a really effective leader that you once worked with, or anyone in your life that's been an effective mentor. One of the things you probably remember most is when you were present with them, you felt their belief in you and their appreciation of you and your importance, and that elevates your own sense of yourself. And to me, that is part of my personal, mission and purpose, is having that effect on other people, not from an ego perspective, but recognizing what a ripple effect that can have when every person we're with feels uplifted as a result of having been with us.
Yeah, I talked to Ryan on occasion about the power and the value of appreciation, that employees would actually, they would do more if they were appreciated more than they would for money, right? So they value appreciation more than money. And I've seen employers use appreciation as a manipulation tactic to get employees to do things. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for what you did. And then they add something. Now I need you to do this, kind of as a foot in the door.
Wipes away all the good things that just got said.
But the appreciation, true appreciation, often isn't spoken. It's the feeling that we get when we're in the presence of another person that truly sees our value and expresses it in the way they interact. Communication is to have something in common, right? And so us having something in common really is that energetic feeling that comes across, not only the words, but also the feeling that comes across with those words.
Yes, that's so true. And a lot of that has to do with a willingness to listen to the other person and truly hear what they say, because that's to me, one of the greatest gifts we can give another person is to be a fully present listener. And too often we're sidetracked. If we're on the phone, especially, it's so easy to glance at an email or glance at your phone, doing something else. And I can promise you, every time you do that, you miss whatever it is the person just said. Because
Yeah.
the fact is, we cannot focus on two things at once, not giving our full attention to it. And when it comes to listening, being willing to set aside everything else and give your full attention, including your own thoughts, to
Yeah.
Maybe the
that
most
other
important right
person.
there, right?
Yeah, it's so
Paying
easy to be.
attention to what's going on in here.
Yeah. Oh, it's probably the biggest distractor we have. And too often and this is where I have learned so much from Steve Hardison, this idea of not judging, but simply loving. To be present with the person with a sense of love for them, what they have to say and their value, and not evaluating, do I agree with or not with what they're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or having to prove myself right, or correcting them. All these things that can go into our heads, and instead just hear what they're saying and then reflect back, showing you got it. You really understand what they're trying to tell you.
One of my favorites, well, I have a lot of favorites, but Carl Rogers in his work, he's one of the godfathers of psychology, of modern psychology, but
Mhm.
he would simply listen to people, feedback what he heard them say. They would solve their own problems by being heard.
Exactly.
Steve Chandler does the same thing. Steve Hardison does the same thing. I missed out on the name Steve. I'm a Nicholas, but I hear to be successful in this business, you got to have the name Steve or Meredith, right? I
I'll start
missed out
calling
on
you
both of
Meredith,
those.
Nick. Fine.
uh, the listening, as much as the speaking, hearing people, like truly hearing people. Brandon Craig, I went through his program with my former wife, and that allowed us to communicate through a divorce. It allowed us to maintain a relationship and a friendship after a divorce, and to be able to work together to help our kids because we're able to hear each other. We
Mm.
learn. It was a skill you talked about before the show. It's a skill set. It's not something that we're born with. It's something we develop. Can you talk about that?
Sure. All of these interpersonal skills
Yeah.
are unfortunately not taught in our schools. And many homes, the parents are doing the best they can, but they haven't learned how to do these skills well. And so we have people growing up, and going into the workplace, knowing certain knowledge about the technical aspect of their work, but the people in how to interact well with other people, to speak up honestly and in a caring way where you both are able to hear each other and resolve differences or address things that need to be talked about. We don't have those. And we don't all of a sudden acquire them. They take practice, and many times years of practice, because it's really a physical thing in the brain. When we have a way of doing things, whether it's how we, hit a baseball bat or a golf club, or um, play the piano, or talk to someone else, all of those are habits that are wired in our brains. And
And they're
so,
they're in different areas. You have Broca's and Wernicke's area, and they're in different parts of the brain. Like
yes. Yeah. So if you think about a habit that many people have of interrupting folks,
just like
or
I did right there.
or, or finishing their sentences, because we have limited time here. We got to move
Yeah,
along.
yeah,
Or something, or if we don't respect that other person, so we really want to hear what they have to say for as limited a time as possible. Whatever the reason, we can get in these habits that don't help us in our relationships with other people. And to say, I'm going to all of a sudden stop interrupting people,
mm,
it takes practice to do that, because what we have to do physically is lay down new wiring in our brain.
yeah, yeah,
And so it's sort of like starting on a dirt road, or bumpy road with potholes, and we've got to build this super highway over time where that becomes the way we are. And it doesn't happen overnight. So that's where practice, getting coaching for someone as we're trying to make these changes in our behavior, can serve us so much more powerfully.
yeah.
And I'll give you a real example among the three owners. At one point, Denny was the one that interrupted us, and we were committed to helping him become a better non-interrupter, better listener. It turned out all three of us did it at different times when we were, having these conversations. And
It's
so
like
what we learned
you.
to do for each other
Right.
was simply say, if someone started to interrupt, simply say, I wasn't done yet, or please let me finish. And that was our cue. Oh, I interrupted. And we catch each other sometimes and say, oops, I just interrupted you. Please go ahead.
There's an agreement in place,
Yeah.
and as I interrupt you, there's an agreement that, yeah, this is edgy. Like the agreement between the three of you is that you can do that. Because if I am talking to somebody that doesn't have the skill set around that, and I say, well, you're interrupting me, I'm not done yet, they might really take that internally and say, well, Nick's a butthole and all this stuff, right? They might not receive it very well. And so the importance of agreement in communication too. Can we agree to do this?
Mhm.
And even somebody that's not skilled in it, to be able to create an agreement with them is, look, I have a way of being. Is it okay if I speak the way I speak? That can create
Yeah.
some
And
peace.
you're bringing up another point.
I'm not
How
done
we
yet.
say,
I'm just
how we
kidding.
say what we say is so important. Like, I wasn't done yet.
Yeah.
Versus, I wasn't done yet. Please let me finish. We can say it in a way that causes the person to want to call us names
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
to become more self-aware.
Mm.
And I think you're right. If we notice a behavior pattern with someone, it's best to bring it up to them in a separate conversation and say, Nick, I've noticed you've been interrupting me at times when we have these conversations. And
Yeah.
so I'm wondering if it would be okay with you if when we're having our next conversation, if you jump in too quickly, uh, and you could even ask them, what would be a good cue for me to give you to
Mm.
please back off of doing that? Because when we were in person, the three of us together, we would just do this with Denny and he would realize, oops, like stop. So you can have these hand signals,
Yeah.
or you can simply have cues that you say
I
to each other.
just started doing the Macarena.
But it's the agreements that are so important. You're right. And
Yeah.
and it goes back to having this sense of mutual respect with each other and not, I'm going to, do a gotcha, you did it again kind of thing. That's not useful. That's not helpful or supportive to the other person. So if
Yeah.
you know someone is working to improve a specific area where they want to really, get better, then simply to ask, how could I best support you? Or what would support look like for you? Because we can make assumptions. And I've been so guilty of this because I have this desire to help, right? Be a help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those of us that are helpers can get caught up in helping too much sometimes when somebody
Yeah.
doesn't welcome it. And so to ask, what would support look like for you? What could I do for you to help you as you're on this journey of wanting to do this or do that? That can apply to any kind of area where somebody's pursuing an ambitious goal, anything else, to not assume we know best about what would be supportive to them
Mm.
just because we think it might be supportive to us.
And it never hurts to get more clarity. Like I don't. I mean, it just because then you make up less stories in your brain about what they're thinking. Like.
So true.
So it's always good to just make sure you're
We
clear and understanding what they're saying.
Yes.
just kidding. we we never know what other people are thinking. Yet we have this tendency to think that we know what others are thinking. And then we speak in behalf of them with no idea of what's going on over there. And just in adding to what you brought to the table here is you're demonstrating through this conversation the strong leadership, which is that ability to really listen and hold space for and appreciate and acknowledge. You're demonstrating that here. So as people go back and watch this, they'll be able to see that through this. Now, you might have more to share around that. So I want to make sure we give you space to do that. So is there more that you
Well,
want
I'm
to
sure
share?
she
yes,
does.
I just thought
Yeah.
of another word in terms of coming to a conversation that I don't think we've talked about yet, and that is curiosity.
Mm.
because when I'm genuinely curious about another person, I'm not going to be focused on myself or asking or saying things about me. I am exploring, and that includes what made me think about curiosity was this whole topic we've just been talking about, not assuming we know what someone else means,
Yeah.
to express curiosity, not judgment, when they say something unexpected. And we might be tempted to jump to conclusions about what they meant or where they were coming from. And instead just say, oh, that was so interesting that you say that. I'm curious to know what caused you to conclude that, or what's your reasoning behind that? Not like an inquisition of why do you think that, because that puts someone on the defensive. I've done that before. That's how I know, right?
That
Uh,
could be
but
that
to
could be
come from
hard, right? Sometimes, so Meredith, right? Like
what?
that could be a hard thing as a leader to swallow that. And as
Absolutely.
I interrupted, but I'm like
No,
that's
that's okay.
that's an important part to highlight because we do
It
that.
is.
Like, if you don't have an internal awareness of of like, hey, it's okay, like I need to get clear with this person, you just won't. And if you don't make it a focus about being
Yes.
curious on them.
It's so true. And the challenge that many leaders have is they feel like they have to be the answer person. Somebody comes to them with a question or a problem and they think, oh, I got to know the answer. When in fact, as you said earlier, Nick, what the best coaches do is they recognize the person has the answer within them. It's asking the right questions that help them draw it out of themselves. And what that does, it elevates their thinking about themselves. It helps them realize they're more self-reliant. And it also frees that leader from dependence of other people on them. So you have more self-reliant, resourceful people who can solve their own problems or their own issues because they've learned how to think for themselves due to the questions the leader has asked. And so that goes
Wow.
back to, being curious about, well, what were you thinking about this? Or what ideas have you had already to address this? Because I'm
Mm.
sure, based on your experience, you have some ideas. I'd love to hear them first before I would share with you, because in many workplaces, the atmosphere is don't take risks, color within the lines,
Mm.
be careful, don't make mistakes. These are all the messages people get. And so they're afraid of making decisions that could get them in trouble if they make a wrong decision or something that doesn't turn out as well as they hope. So they can be safe by going to their boss and saying, hey, what should I do here? And then the boss is going, oh, yes, we'll do ABC. That is more time efficient, but is it really helping long term? And it may or may not be most time efficient, actually, because that manager could be wrong. They
Yeah.
may not have the best answer. They
I've
may
got
not
a
know all the elements
I've got
that
a
the other.
clever thought here but I'll
What?
I've got a clever thought here, and I'll plug it in because it applies. That the questioning is like the key, right? And the listening is the lock. And so being able to listen is as important as the question. Like the question will unlock the lock, but it also depends on how it's being listened to, right? And like you said, employees do want to play it safe, so they come in and they want the quick answer, but there's no real communication there. There's just going to the dictionary or the book and the how-to manual and just finding a solution real quick and going back at it.
Also, when a manager encourages the employee to think through
Mm.
by asking good questions, and then an employee can come up with the answer, that confidence it builds in them about their own capabilities. That to me is one of the responsibilities of a good leader, is helping others grow in their confidence about their capabilities, about who they are, who they can be,
Mm.
by realizing their potential. And if a manager is always providing the answers, it's stunting the growth. Again, it's causing someone to continue playing small instead of helping them see how they can become a giant. And so it all, goes back to what's my purpose in interacting with this person. And if we're always coming from a place of loving and serving and of being of greatest service to that person to help them become their best self, that guides the questions we ask, the responses we make, and just how we are with that other individual. One of my favorite chapters in one of Steve Chandler's latest books, I've read, I think, almost 20 now of his books. He's my very favorite author. But in his book, How to Get Clients, he had this one chapter about curiosity. And what he says the impact of being curious is when you are genuinely with this person and asking these questions, what they feel is love.
Mm.
Now, think about that. The power of that is just remarkable to me. I remember making a little quote out of it and publishing it out on social media because it just resonated with me about why it's so important to do that. If we truly want to have these profound positive relationships with other people, having them feel love from us in ways other than saying I love you is is just, to me, one of the best gifts we can give another
Mm.
human being.
I like that. That is a mattering, right? When people feel like they matter, then they make you matter. They make your dreams matter. But when we don't make their dreams matter, then there's a loss of love, like you said, and communication right there. Like they're not important.
Yeah. Some of the best leaders also make time to get to know each person on their team as a
Mm.
human being. What matters to them in their family life,
Yeah.
in their personal life. What are their dreams and aspirations? Too many are task focused on, did you get this done? Did you get that done? Did you meet this deadline? And so there's no connection there. And so we hear these terms like quiet quitting or the great
Mhm.
resignation. All of those tie in with this idea of people not feeling they matter. Why do I need to do my best work here? Nobody cares.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I read some statistics this morning. 15% of employees in the UK are disconnected. Up to 50% in the US are disconnected. Like, it's just like there's no connection. And it goes back to that. I don't matter. So why should you matter? Why should this matter? It doesn't matter. And you'll hear that languaging. You hear employees talking back and forth. It's, well, why? They just
Yeah,
complain about not mattering. But you
yeah.
make people feel important, they make your dream important too.
Well, leaders who say, I don't have time, really need to look at their schedules and say,
Mm.
where am I investing my time? Because if they aren't investing time in getting to know their people, they're really neglecting a key part of their job.
Is there a better word than leader for that?
Well, are you talking about people who are in ownership,
There,
or
yeah,
leadership positions? What else to call
yeah.
them?
I mean, leadership is not that. Leadership is what you're describing, uh, as a
Yeah,
possibility. But when an owner of a company or a manager or somebody comes in and they're not acting from a space of leadership, which is inspiring in others their giantness,
yeah.
they're coming from some other space. And I don't know that I put you on the spot with that question. That's maybe a tough question, but something to consider. Is that leadership?
Yeah, that's a good distinction. A lot of times management is defined as, focusing on the things, the
Yeah,
processes, the systems, the tasks that need to be done, and leadership is focused on the people side. So that's one distinction, that
I
can
like
be
that.
made. To me, it boils down to, am I being a human being who cares about the human beings who work with me? Or am I being more mechanical about it? And
Yeah, wow.
focused on logistics and the getting it done instead of who am I being as the person who wants to have these things get done, and how do I need to show up in order to draw out the best of the people. And by the way, this goes for parents too.
Yeah,
This is not restricted to leadership in the workplace. We can be leaders in anything we're involved in, whether it's a volunteer organization we're, on the board of or working in, or in our families as a spouse or the child of or a sibling. There are so many ways that we can be this way with others that help them feel appreciated and valued, that elevate their own feelings of themselves.
I think this is phenomenal. I think we could keep going for another hour easily, and maybe we'll have you on again to talk about this because it's a powerful topic, and I really appreciate you sharing what you did. And by appreciation, I'll define that as increasing the value of what you just did. Right? That's beautiful what you created here, because there's a way of seeing the world and experiencing the world that really opens up the mattering of other people and the mattering of ourselves inside of that. Like learning to be kind to ourselves helps us to learn to be kind to others, right? Things like that. So is there anything else you want to share that maybe got missed or that you wanted to bring up that we didn't get to? And what would that be?
It would probably be more to think about applying some of this to our own selves. You know, how can I talk to myself so that I elevate my feelings about myself instead of being critical? Because when we can take this approach with ourselves, then it's so much easier to be
Oh,
that way
yeah.
with
Yeah.
others. When I find myself being critical of someone, and typically it might be my husband since we live together and have been together for 40 years.
Yeah.
um, those closest to us can be the ones we are least tolerant of at times. What I've learned though is when I'm feeling intolerant, it's time to look within because there's
Mhm.
something about me that I am not liking in this moment, and I'm just projecting it onto this other person.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can I can rationalize it as, oh, it's their behavior, it's what they're doing, or it's not, or what they're not doing. But the truth is, it goes back to what story am I telling myself about this? And,
Mm.
what reality am I creating out of this that is only out of my imagination and doesn't really exist? It just is. And so learning to catch myself quickly to realize, go inside, do the work, as Byron Katie says, to
Yeah.
see, is this true? Or am I simply um, coming up with a story that doesn't serve me or this other person, because then I'm not showing up as my best self to
Yeah.
them or to me.
That's powerful because it could be so easy to justify our positioning and our story, right?
Yes.
And there's plenty of evidence one way or the other. Yeah, thank you for that. That was a golden nugget right there. That was beautiful. Ryan, did
Okay.
you have some more thoughts that you want to share?
And I've watched a fair amount of Meredith stuff, and I think that I was introduced to Meredith through Vanessa Browers, I believe,
Love
who's an
Vanessa.
amazing human being. Yes, and both of you are. So thank you so much. But I would venture to say that this is just the tip of the iceberg on what Meredith can provide and show you about yourself. And then I know because I've watched her work. So this is a knowing, not an assumption, that she can help you see you as a giant, and then you go do the work and grow because of what Meredith sees and helps you see in yourself. She's a master. She is somebody that is just somebody that's in pure integrity, and I can feel it. I see it. I know it. You would be well served to follow Meredith, support her, buy the books, get into conversation with her, and she'll continue to help millions and millions of people. And just so that you know, Meredith, your message is essentially our message, and so we carry that. The things that we're learning from you, that ripple effect is going to go on for a long, long time and touch a whole bunch of other people. And I know there's a ton of people here in the comments that will take that message and also move it along, and and share it with others. So you're having a massive effect on other
Oh,
people. So thank you so much for
thank
blessing
you.
us today.
Oh, Ryan, I appreciate your words so much. And it reminded me, I want to let people know, besides my own podcast, Grow Strong Leaders, I'm also co-host of the Ultimate Coach podcast.
Mm,
So you'll hear me on some of those episodes as well. So
I
thank
love
you
it.
both for having me. I've loved our conversation.
You're very welcome. Yeah, we'll do this again. And thank you for all that you share. I'm grateful that, for me to be able to sit back and learn around leadership of what that looks like by demonstration, right? Because I have a construct of it in my mind, but you have a demonstration of it. And I think Steve Chandler talks about that in his books, the difference between the vacuum salesman that tells all the benefits and features of something and the one that throws dirt on your carpet, right? It says, would you like me to clean that up? The power of what you share here is that you're demonstrating how to be a leader. And so thank you for that. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For those that are watching, thank you for being a part of our show. If you haven't joined us on YouTube, make sure you go do that. Tons of episodes on there, powerful episodes to help you reach your giant potential, which is already in there. It's just been covered up by the stuff you think you're not. So go take it off in that private dressing room called Wake Up with Giants. Put on something better, right? I don't know if that's the best analogy for it, but we love you. You're exactly where you need to be. This is where you launch from. Go make it a giant day, and we'll see you in the next video.
love you too.